My name is Jim Lattis, and I am the director of UW Space Place, which is where we are today. This is the outreach facility of the UW-Madison Astronomy Department. We're standing here in front of some historic astronomical instruments that connect to really important astronomical history of science in the United States and in the world, and lead ultimately, although they look a little primitive, these things lead eventually to instruments that fly in space, and for instance on the Hubble Space Telescope. This technology that we see here, the photoelectric technology, uses tubes that use something called the photoelectric effect, so that they can measure an amount of electricity that's directly proportional to an amount of light. He found this method and managed to build devices, instruments out of it, by a series of trials and failures and trials once again, rejecting one technology or another and moving on to another. This instrument they came up with in about 1932, and it was a huge improvement over the ones that Stebbins had originally developed. And this led to the solution of some really important problems in astrophysics, like how big is our galaxy and what is it made of? Some big, really important questions. And so one of the things we do in the history of science, of course, is try to understand how our development and thinking about the world comes about, and what we have to go on are things like these instruments, like these historical instruments, or of course documents and interviews, accounts of the scientists who were thinking about this work. How were they thinking about it? How were they coming up with the questions that they needed to test, and then how were they coming up with technologies and methods that would allow them to test the ideas that they had. And so what we have here is kind of the musical score of history. We've got kind of the bare bones account that we have to make into a proper historical narrative that answers the kind of questions that we want to know about history. And that's a little bit like what the artist does when presented with the musical score. You've got sort of the raw material there that has to be interpreted not only by the artist or the historian in my analogy, but also for the audience. Distant descendants of those early photoelectric tubes ended up flying on the Hubble Space Telescope. Here they are inside of this instrument, which is the high-speed photometer that was built here at UW-Madison as one of the original science instruments for the Hubble Space Telescope, and was launched with the Hubble Space Telescope back in 1990 when it was put into space. This instrument flew with it. It was built here by astronomers and students at the university, employing this technology which has its roots way back there with those photoelectric detectors from the 1920s and the 1930s.